Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The time is 9:04, and today is Thursday, December 8th, 2022. This is the second day of a two-day meeting of the Physical Therapy Board of California. Today, we're meeting in the hearing room at the Department of Consumer Affairs building located at 2005 Evergreen Street in Sacramento, California. This is an official business meeting of the Physical Therapy Board. The board's role is to remain and maintain consumer protection, consult with local and state entities on laws and regulations pertaining to the physical therapy industry. We will take public comment on specific agenda items, and at the end of the meeting, there will be a session for items not on the agenda. Public comments must be specific to the agenda item that's being discussed. If you make a comment during a specific agenda item that's not related to that topic, you'll be directed to hold your comments until we reach the appropriate agenda item. All comments that do not directly relate to an item on the agenda should be held until the agenda item for items not on the agenda. The board follows the Open Meeting Act, so while we accept and appreciate the public's comments, we cannot respond to those comments. This meeting's being recorded, and minutes of the meeting will be prepared. Can we please have roll call?
Alicia Rabina, amen.
Here.
Tanya McMillian, excuse me. She's not present. Dale Armstrong.
Here.
Jesus Dominguez.
Present.
Daniel Drummer.
Present.
Katarina Ellaby.
Present.
Jonathan Irvin.
Present.
Okay, we have 6 members present, so there is a quorum.
Thank you. And if we can please ask Dr. Daniel Drummer to read the board's mission statement.
The mission of the Physical Therapy Board of California is to advance and protect the interests of the people of California by the effective administration of the Physical Therapy Practice Act.
Thank you, Dr. Drummer. And if I may begin this morning with agenda item number 25, which is board member training for the Form 700 with Kim Rosakis.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Kim Rosakis, and I am the Board Relations Liaison for the board. There is a handout. There are 3 handouts in front of you. It's a lot of paper, I'm sorry. So the first one is just information about Form 700. The second one is your restrictions on gifts, travel and loans, and then the last one is the FAQs. Any questions about 700? This is just a really quick reminder on Form 700, and 700 is also known as a statement of economic interest, and it is necessary information for the public about official personal financial interest to ensure officials are making decisions in the best interest of the public and not enhancing their personal finances. And this also serves as a reminder to the public officials if there's any potential conflicts of interest, so the officials can abstain from making or participating in governmental decisions that are deemed conflict of interest. And Form 700 must be filed within 30 days of assuming office, and annually by April 1st, and within 30 days of leaving office. And around January, you all will get a reminder email from NetFile. It's just a generic no reply email. Keep an eye out on that, and you guys will also get a reminder, I would say like every month or so by April 1st to make sure you do it. And if anyone is late, they will charge you a $10 fee and a maximum of $100. And if you are not filing timely and they refer you to the Fair Political Practice Commission, you could be fined up to $5,000. So just make sure you guys do it. But if you are serving in the military and you're an active military, then you can get an extension on that and you will not get fined. And Form 700 is a public record and anybody can access that on whatever you guys file. So just a reminder, and I'm always here for help if you guys have any questions.
So the process seems to be pretty easy.
Yeah,
We just log on, I forget my password, I
Yep.
hit forget password, it gives it to me. And it really takes less than 5 minutes to do. And so does PTBC staff Do they have access to who's still outstanding?
Yes.
To help push us along?
So I could view who filed and the progress that you guys have taken, 50%, 25% completion. So it's easy. I just log in. Yeah. Any other questions?
Just Michael Canotes, legal counsel. Just a reminder to board members that beyond the administrative stuff, if you ever have questions about gifts, about conflict of interest, about what you need to report on Form 700, honoraria, all those items, you can certainly contact me and we can have a confidential discussion about those matters. So, anytime.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the reasons for us bringing this to you today is there's a considerable amount of attention being applied to this year. So you'll probably receive, as Kim said, that the email from NetFile directly. Two individuals from the Department of Consumer Affairs, Rochelle Perham and Christine Bieman, that may also be reaching out to you to kind of keep track and make sure that we do it timely. Kim will also probably be sending an email because she'll be keeping track of it as well. And the sooner we do it and get it done, the less emails we'll have bugging you.
But it's pretty painless. It's not, yeah. You just go online, like Alicia said, just click on and answer the questions. It should be fairly quick.
And I mean, I can speak for myself, but I appreciate the emails and the reminders, because sometimes we have good intentions and we're in our lane and we forget, or we just don't get to it. So that does happen sometimes, so I appreciate it. Feel free to bug us.
Yeah. But I'm also here, though. You guys can always email me, call me. I'm available to you guys at any time for help.
From what I remember, it remembers what you filled out the year prior, so
Mhm.
it kind of just have to
Mhm.
update.
That's right.
Yeah, if there's not been any changes in your financial situation, then it's kind of mundane. It's just repetitive and quick.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you so
I'm
much.
not sure if you said, what is the timing of when, I mean, it's not available now.
No, April, so January is when they usually send an email out, so January is when it's available for you to complete. And then it's due April 1st, but they usually want it about March-ish for the due date, just to follow up with anyone that hasn't completed it, and they want time.
And then just internally for PTDC, I think our goal is February.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good goal. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Well, before I move on to the next agenda item, I just wanted to ask if there was any public comment on that? And let's move to agenda item number 18, which is DCA Budget Office Presentation of Services.
We have Renee Milano and Sarah Hinkle with us to help us with this presentation.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's a little bit of feedback.
Yeah. It's been a little bit.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Hinkle. I'm the DCA budget analyst for the board, and I'm here with my budget manager, Renee Milano. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for this time to be able to provide you information on what services the budget office provides and how our costs are distributed to the board. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's try.
Maybe
it.
try the.
Yeah, sorry about
Are we moving?
that one off there.
I'm sorry for the musical chair.
They're gonna redo this room next month, so.
Can we get that on record?
Okay, so first of all, so our goal in the budget office for in DCA all around is to provide quality and cost-effective budgetary and financial services to all of our DCA boards and bureaus and all of our program customers. And the way we do this is we assist the board when it comes to the annual governmental budget development and implementation and monitoring services. And so we assist with board staff in completing all the annual incremental adjustments And examples of these would be the GSI, general salary increases, and employee comp and retirement annual increases. We also assist the board with preparing and submitting budget change proposals. And a budget change proposal is basically it changes a level of service or funding sources for activities authorized by the legislator or to propose new program activities that are not centrally authorized. And for example, just recently we assisted the board in preparing a BCP request for that was requesting for additional resources to maintain its current, I'm sorry, I'm reading this one. We just assisted the board when it came to BCP for the licensing unit. The licensing unit, and that one we just closed. So that was one example in way that we assisted the board. We also assist the board by coordinating legislative bill analysis and regulation package development services. And we also facilitate communication and coordination of information between the board and state and legislative control agencies. So this would be coordinating with finance, state and consumer services agency, the legislative analyst office, and the California state legislator. And so the budget office also provides regular updates on board's expenditures, revenues, fund condition, and projection reports. And we do this using fund condition statements and also expenditure projection reports. And so our fund condition statement, this is a point-in-time document that provides an overview of the status of the board's fund. And it's used to monitor and project the future health of the board's fund and determine if the fund's balance is growing or if it's declining. And we also use it to determine when fees need to be either increased or decreased. And then also we have the expenditure projection report. And these are budget reports that we provide to the board to see how the board is expending its funds throughout the fiscal year. And it's a detailed report with all the expenses broken out by categories such as salaries, benefits, enforcement activities, and so forth. And we use this to assist the board to make in making financial decisions and to ensure that the board maintains expenditures within their authorized appropriation. And then also the budget office provides various consulting services, including regulation review, again, VCP review, and also assistance on schedules such as like the out-of-state travel. And these are services specific to the budget office, but DCA provides a wide range of centralized administrative services to all the boards and bureaus through its two primary divisions, and that's the Consumer and Client Services Division. So this includes human resources, facilities, our office, contracts, accounting, and legal services. And then we also have the Division of Investigation, and these would be like enforcement activities. And so DCA provides these services to the board by utilizing funds that are obtained through pro rata. And so the board doesn't require its own staff for these activities. And so these costs for these centralized services are distributed amongst all the boards and the bureaus utilizing various distribution methodologies, which are primarily based on authorized positions. So for example, the greater number of positions would necessarily require more admin support, and so more HR related workload, it could cost more HR related workload and costs, basically. And then we also have the participation rates. So this would be like call volume, with more complaint calls received by the call center or even IT usage. So example would be like more licensing, applying for licensure or renewing their licensees. And then we also have the usage of the DOI. So this is, again, enforcement and investigation activity. So the more cases that are sent to DOI, it drives higher enforcement-related costs. And so those are the services that we provide, and that's also how we distribute them. Are there any questions that we can answer?
How often are the fund condition statements and expenditure projection reports, how often are those conducted?
I would say, I try to get them to the board at their request, so that, sometimes they're just looking for for something specific, but we also usually try to get them quarterly, if not.
We do complete an expenditure projection monthly based off of when accounting releases our fiscal month data, essentially. And then we provide a consolidated package, as it were, for the board as requested or on a quarterly basis. Sometimes on a monthly, it just depends on the need. For higher scrutinized funds, we will obviously do it more frequently. For the more healthy funds, quarterly is probably our average.
It can be very situational, so there have been times, as an example, just our relocation and move, where we're really kind of try to keep a closer eye on how the monies are spending from month to month. And Budgets has always been very accommodating in our requests for, I received a fund condition last month, yes, but I need another one this month because we're getting closer and closer to our projected goal. And then last fiscal year is a pretty good example. Early on into the fiscal year, it looked like we were getting close to a very close expenditure, and that we might come very close to a full expenditure of our allocated budget. We were looking for fund conditions much more frequently at that point, so that we can kind of keep an eye on that as well.
Thank you. And I know a couple of years ago when, I'm sorry that I don't know the name, but we changed, was it to Fiscal? And so, of course, that transition took some time to kind of adjust and to get us on track. But are we pretty much on track with that now as far as timeliness and getting the reports that we need? Well, Fiscal is live, so that system is fully integrated within the department. And we work with our accounting office to get pretty frequent numbers, but depending on the time of the fiscal year and workload, it can be a little infrequent, but we do tend to get them pretty consistently. Great. So it seems like we're back on track then with that system. There was that transitional period, but we've since gone fully live, so the system is fully updated. Yeah, it seemed like it took quite a while to kind of get back up to date, but it's good to hear that we're right on track then.
Yeah, Fiscal being a statewide implementation, right? So you can imagine kind of on a large-scale project trying to fit every client into a new accounting system. There were a lot of growing pains. And I think we're still learning a little bit more about Fiscal every day. At least we are internally at PTBC, because we're trying to, not disrupt the flow of information so much. So the display that we provide to you every day, or at each quarter meeting, is consistent, and you don't really see the blip, right? But the translation document that occurs in the background is something that we're still kind of interpreting.
And regarding pro rata services, does the department have any sort of feedback mechanism from boards and bureaus to improve pro rata services? So pro rata in regards to non-situational, like phone call centers, those are usually going to be primarily based off of physician count, just because that's a good standardized way for us to base our boards and bureaus' needs. We haven't had a whole lot of communicative from the boards and bureaus on a new system. It's been pretty much the consistent system we've used throughout the department. So, how about quality of services? Is there any survey or feedback mechanism for boards and bureaus to provide feedback to the department regarding the quality of services, timeliness? I know that we're very customer service oriented, so we're always open to any communication our boards and bureaus want to provide us on this type of service or the quality of service they've received. There's no, I'm trying to think of the exact word, but there's no specific process in place for that. No formal mechanism. Thank you. Yeah, no formal mechanism.
And I don't know that I wouldn't say there's no formal mechanism, in the sense that each individual unit has, a management team that we coordinate with regularly, right? So if we have business services offices or facilities or something specific that way, we have points of contact and an open line of communication where we can, air our concerns or our grievances, if you will, and there's always a process to do that within. The cost methodology is, I think the best way to explain that is PY is a very good way of making sure that larger boards pay a larger portion of what it takes to support the Department of Consumer Affairs pro rata services. But there are a few kind of outliers where, and I think Sarah kind of referred to them, is that some of these things are transactional in nature, right? So while they may not have a large number of employees in position authority, there's a lot of throughput, running through their electronic system, their databases and those kind of things. So instead of doing it based on the position authority for the board, they might do it based on licensing population or transactions as a result of that licensing population. And so each invoiceable service can be calculated differently, and I think the choices that they made on how to do those are logical. I mean, they make sense. It's more about volume of workload and that everybody pays their fair share.
Makes sense. Other board member comment or questions? Any public comment? Thank you both for your time and the presentation. We appreciate it.
I'm going to have them sit where they are for the next item, because I'm going to be subbing in for Liz for the
Sure.
budget report. So, as you see from the briefing paper, things are fairly status quo. And just in case you have any questions, I'm asking Renee and just to kind of back me up in case there are questions that I can answer. I think the thing for me and at my level of scrutiny for the administration of this board that I keep an eye on is that we're not living beyond our means, right? And so we've seen an increase, a small increase in our expenditures. As long as I see a equal to or greater than increase in the revenues received, I'm comfortable with that. And so as we move from quarter to quarter, we're not, living beyond our means. Having said that, we also have to stay within this year's fiscal year budget, right? So the numbers that you have in front of you are for quarter one, and so you would expect to see anywhere from 20 to 30% expended, and we're right around 31% expended of the current year budget. So we're a little bit ahead, which is not all that anomalous. 31% is not something that I would think is urgent or something that we have to worry about. I think it will equal out throughout the rest of the year. And then the other thing that I think I would draw your attention to is just looking at those numbers when it comes to, while we have a slight increase in expenditures, it's kind of balanced out by a more significant increase in revenues received.
Board member questions, comments? I think my only question right now is about staffing. So we did have someone in-house who was kind of assigned to looking more closely at our budget or watching it.
Yeah, so one of the vacancies that I had mentioned in the executive officer report was a vacancy for our in-house budget analyst. We're conducting interviews for that position next week, and so we should probably have a selection sometime in January. And so we're hoping to fill that position as quickly as possible, too.
Thank you. Any public comment? Thank you. Thank you both, and thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 19, administrative services update. We're done with the budget report, and we're on to outreach.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is April Beauchamp. I'm the Communication and Education Liaison, and I will be presenting the outreach report. So for the website in fiscal year 2022-23, quarter one, the PTVC had 41,581 web hits through its homepage tabs. That resulted in a 6% decrease from last fiscal year, quarter one, and again, that's contributed to all of our efforts to go paperless, direct applicants and licensees to Breeze, plus we're also still in the process of revamping our website. For social media, you may have noticed a change in the report. Before, we only collected statistics on Facebook and reported on those. Due to the research that we have done on all of the other social media platforms and the significant importance of utilizing all of them to reach our stakeholders, I've recreated the report to show stats for all of the social media platforms that we use. So you will notice that for TikTok and LinkedIn, the year-to-year change is all zeroed out. The reason for that is because TikTok we just created this quarter, or this last quarter, so there's nothing to compare it to for last year. And then LinkedIn does not let us go that far back, but we'll be able to use this report next year to compare it going forward. Also, by doing this new chart, it allows us to compare the social media platforms to each other as well. So, for example, all of them have impressions, which is the number of people who saw any content from that social media page. So we're able to look at all that, compare it to the number of followers we have for each of those platforms, and so we can look at the numbers that way too. For outreach workshops and webinars, so during Q1, we provided virtual and in-person outreach workshops to 11 PT and PTA programs. We look forward to providing more in the future and are continuing to fill up our 2022-23 outreach calendar right now. Lastly, the fall 2022 progress notes are now available. I've also provided you all with a copy. And that is it for the outreach report. Does anybody have any questions?
April, are you aware, or are we aware of other jurisdiction boards that monitor, that participate in social networking sites or venues, and do they do any tracking? Do we know?
I don't know of any boards that do it to the extent that we do it. I do know that DCA has a team with communication analysts that do help boards and assist them with their social media content if needed, and they've reached out to us. We've met with them. As far as like doing statistical reports on the numbers, I'm not sure.
And is your question primarily California specific, or are we looking nationwide?
I was actually really thinking about PT boards nationwide.
Right.
And now that I asked the question, it would have been a good thing to bring up a month and a half ago in Anaheim at the FSBPT conference.
Anecdotally, I can tell you from conversation with FSBPT and kind of older topics going back a couple of years, that the use of social media and outreach for some states can be quite normal, and for some states is quite controversial. So some states do it the way we do. I think our closest Venus is probably the state of Ohio. We have kind of an ongoing competition with them to see who can get better numbers. So shout out to Missy Anthony in Ohio. But there are some states that don't see a relevant business need in social media as it pertains to regulation, and so this would be, in their minds, kind of a waste of time. So for us, I think we took a very early kind of approach that this is free advertising, and we have limited avenues on how to go about reaching our stakeholders. We have a fairly good reference library when it comes to our own applicants and our own licensees and how to reach out to them. But to get past that and to get into educational programs and to get to the consumer and those kind of things, social media is well worth the investment at that point. I mean, just the impression numbers alone kind of demonstrate that.
And then I don't recall, but is FSBPT engaged in any of the social media?
They do have social media accounts that they use for students and applicants. They do post some content about examinations, when they're happening, when registrations are happening, and those kind of things. I follow them and I see those posts, but I haven't really looked at any of their statistical reports or anything like that.
Other board member comments or questions regarding outreach? Any public comment? Thank you, April, for your continued hard work.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 20, application services update.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'd like to start by calling your attention to the application services report. And I got my papers mixed up, so sorry. The application services statistics report. As you can see, applications received were up 7% overall from the same quarter last year, with 580 total received. Typically, the fourth quarter of a year is when we receive the most applications. That's when most of the PT programs in schools graduate. Endorsement applications and non-CAPTE accredited applications run fairly constant through the year, with a slight uptick in spring and summer. Average turnaround time overall for the first quarter through October 30th averaged 93 days, and applications received without deficiencies were in the board's hands for only 23 days on average. This can be attributed to several factors. The outreach program certainly, which educates soon-to-be graduates so that applications received are more complete, oftentimes completely complete. And our application process, which has been streamlined and online and digitized overall, as well as our staff. The staff is very cooperative, flexible. Our process is agile, and we are able to make big headway when we do experience a backlog. Any questions about the application services statistics?
Are the trends in increases or decreases in military applications, do they just vary from quarter to quarter, year to year, or do you see trends?
Not much. It's, I suppose when, not much, am I right on that? Yeah, it's pretty consistent. I think that we did see a slight uptick a couple of years ago when more service members were being deployed to California for deployment overseas, but that's fairly constant now.
I think at this point, the sample window that we're looking at is small, right? And so like if you look at the report for military year-to-date versus quarter one, it's down, but we're talking it's a difference of one application in that quarter period compared to the year before, right? So the weight of each particular variable is significant because the sample's so small at this point.
That makes sense.
Year over year, we're starting to see an increase because I think the legislation is becoming more known and more popular, and they're adding a little bit of latitude for military service members with each and every new legislative bill. So I think we'll continue to see those numbers increase over time, but they're a small enough population that it's absorbable, and I know that staff are more than happy to provide those accommodations as a courtesy and as an appreciation for that military service.
It seems the U.S. educated applications are pretty straightforward. They're mostly automated through Breeze, whereas foreign educated takes a little more attention and personal service and time and guidance.
Oh, absolutely.
How about military? Where does that fit in as far as?
Military is often treated as an endorsement candidate with the added layer of military over top of it. And so those timelines tend to be very quick and short, and we have diverted resources in the licensing unit specific to a military liaison. So, in an attempt to provide those concierge level services for our folks in the military.
Other board member comments or questions?
I had a question about the length of time that for processing of the application. In the past, I think we've had the discussion about that total length of time included from when the application was first submitted, but the student had not necessarily completed all of the pieces for graduation, so that we couldn't close the application, complete the application until then. Is that still part of the picture?
Yes,
So that's what Valerie was saying, that the overall processing time for the last year was about 90 days, but the board's hands are responsible for that application, it's about 20 days. So we're actually now able to take out the time that it's in the applicant's hands when they have to sit for the exam, or if they have to get fingerprinted, or submit any additional information.
And I think the number, Valerie, was 93,
Right,
and then
93.
with a deficiency, and then 23 if it wasn't.
Correct.
Okay. And I think what's amazing about that to consider is that takes into account an examination schedule that's handled about every 90 days, right? And so some of those folks that are coming to us in their application have a deficiency because they have not sat for the MPTE yet at that point. And even in that situation, the average is 93, you know. Average, you know, very transparently average, some quicker and obviously some much longer. And it depends on what other kind of deficiencies may have occurred in that application, such as missing documentation, or even maybe criminal history that needs to be considered by the enforcement unit. The number that I really like is those folks that manage to get to us, you know, those applicants that have everything together, no deficiencies, and we're able to get those licensed out within 2 to 3 weeks.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, we actually have a process in place now where at intake, the applications that are absolutely complete, that is passed both exams before applying, are taken out of the general mix and licensed as soon as quick as possible. And usually 2 to 3 weeks on average.
Great.
Yep.
That's good to hear. Actually, that was my question, was for that exact scenario. But I'm happy to hear that you're able to extract the time that the burden was on the applicant. You're waiting for something from them. So in that respect, our processing times are pretty good.
And we have, I was just going to say, and we have a little bit more information to share in the next item that kind of touches on that topic also.
So along those lines, is there a mandate to post processing times?
Yes.
There is, and that's still being worked out in implementation with the Department of Consumer Affairs. I think, again, there's 38 different boards and bureaus that have to kind of figure out how we're going to post these times in a kind of uniform way, even though a lot of us have different systems in place when it comes to their application, their examination process. So we will be posting times, and as soon as we get a little bit closer to that goal, we'll be sharing that with the board so you can see what that looks like.
Do you anticipate that would be shared on a homepage or a homepage for licensing?
Yeah, currently what we're looking at is what you would call a widget, a live widget that's on the home page across the bottom, and it runs on live statistical data. And it won't be just timeframes, assuming everything goes according to plan. That's the idea, is to have a live window on the page where an applicant, an education program can go to see what the current timelines are like, along with some other running statistics too, like applications received for the year or licenses issued for the year or something like that.
That'd be great. And perhaps I should have asked this during the last report, but we're talking about websites, and it sounds like that's in the works and hopefully soon.
Hopefully soon. Like, as I had mentioned yesterday, sometime in the first quarter, second quarter of 2023.
Yeah.
And some of that is trying to kind of work out some of these ideas that we have when it comes to widgets. And another example would be a live social media widget on our homepage too. So where you might come to the PTBC's website looking for something in particular and not knowing that we have social media, but right on the front of the webpage seeing what some of the social media might look like, an opportunity to follow, and just by a simple click on your account. The webmasters that are assisting us with that process at DCI are working on that now.
The widgets.
So, the widgets.
Yeah. So I guess I'm thinking, might that implementation of widgets further delay the start date of a new website, or could the website Go live and
without
then,
them.
and then add?
They could. The homepage is probably my biggest hesitation with that, because the real estate on a homepage really kind of has to be very well thought out, right? And I would rather have maybe a month or two, maybe 3 delay than just kind of a void in the middle of the page situation. So.
Yeah.
So I had a question in regards to the processing times. What's the rationale of the government for mandating that?
I think it's accountability and expectation, and also just transparency. I mean, application processes in regulatory boards can be kind of a mystery to the public. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. It's very easy to kind of assume with one individual's expectation, especially in today's day and age of technology and instant gratification, that here are my application documents. Why is it going to take longer than tomorrow? Assuming that, you don't realize that there are 3,000 other people just like you with the same expectation at the very same moment in time. So,
Just wanted to understand rationale from a military standpoint. We want to know how long it takes to do a certain task based on mission.
Absolutely.
So we can plan out missions. From a corporate standpoint, we want to know how long
Performance.
it takes because it's profit driven.
right.
And so from the government standpoint, if we just want to know, just because we want to know, that's
No,
not good enough for
yeah,
me.
we definitely-
I need to know how they're going to use that
Right.
data to improve someone's quality of life potentially.
Yeah, I would have definitely attributed to just accountability, meaning that we are adhering to our mandate and we are processing applications in as quick a fashion as possible while still maintaining that consumer protection. And so, could we go faster? We could. But I would argue that if we went too fast, it would be because we were sacrificing something else, and that would probably be that consumer protection element.
Understood. Thank you.
And oftentimes, any delay in processing application is based upon the applicant not completing it, more so than us not getting to it. Exams, a big one, fingerprint responses, another big holdup. So even with military gets turned around, we get a report weekly that lists the applications received the previous week, and our military liaison starts processing those applications immediately. So it's just a matter of completeness on the applicant's part and exam scores and fingerprints.
Like any good, well-oiled machine, there's always what I would call fallout, right? So you have an application received, and that application received might, while it's been submitted electronically online, it would be, deemed probably complete by the applicant. There may be something missing, or there's a checkbox that wasn't accounted for, or maybe a passport picture that wasn't actually a passport picture. It's something from the Instagram page or something like that instead. And we have, that starts a correspondence with our analysts with them to try and correct that. And that takes time. Criminal history and an investigation that has to take place to determine whether or not that applicant's suitable for licensure. That takes time, right? So those kind of things. And it might not just take time. It might take correspondence with the applicant, right? There might be questions that we have to ask them. And if they happen to be hard to reach or unresponsive, that can add to that, add to that expected timelines that we're talking about in that 93-day average.
The other report that I'd like to call your attention to is the examination statistics. And for PTs, their pass and fail rates have remained fairly constant. PTAs, unfortunately, have not fared as well this last quarter. Direct data is not actually available to explain that, but one must think that they didn't do well during the pandemic either. And I'm thinking that that may be just a holdover from that, and that we may start seeing improvement farther down the line. Any questions on exam scores?
So these would include the January test dates.
So for quarter one, we're still looking at July through September.
So these would include the July test dates?
Correct. And the thing that I would, to Valerie's point, that I would point out to that with the PTA programs in particular, is again, it's a very small sample. So while there's a significant drop in the pass rate, you could attribute that to a single graduating class or
Yeah.
a small group in a single graduating class. It could skew the statistic.
The question, it folds both of these two reports together, I think, and it's, are we aware of any new programs that came on board, like not long before quarter one, that where we would have an influx of new graduating, new applicants who had recently graduated, who would be contributing to the increases in the applicants, the number of applicants, but then it looks like the numbers of individuals taking the exams has probably increased over time as well. And if there are new programs that aren't as up to date about the examination and the law exam, for example, to be able to bring that information to their students, if maybe that's part of what we're seeing.
I think with the recent increase in the number of PTA programs, we're still kind of waiting for those cohorts for graduation, right? So, you know, those particular programs, 18 months. So I think in this year at least, we'll start to see a pretty significant increase in graduations for those PTA programs. As it relates to the examination, it is something that with April's help, when we're speaking to those schools about preparing for the California law examination, preparing for the MPTE, we're very much doing our part. We're going to have to wait until after those programs come to completion, register for the exam, and see what their performance looks like. But we now have the ability to kind of look back to see performance based on education program. And so we'll definitely be watching that as well.
Do we have information about when programs are coming online or producing graduates? Do we know when that's happening?
We do.
Okay.
We do. As part of the, as April's watchful eye in PTA programs and development, and our efforts to reach out to them for outreach coordination, we also pass that information on to the licensing unit. And Valerie has an ongoing list of staff for these new programs, and we're in constant contact so that we can at least get an idea of estimations of applications that we anticipate receiving.
And then along that same train of thought about if programs are increasing the sizes of their classes, if they've established at a lower number and they're like,
Right.
you know what, we're ready to expand, and if that's happening.
Thank you for mentioning that, because that's something that we often kind of neglect to mention. While there might not be a large number, especially with PT, right? We went from 16 to 18. What we have found is that the graduating classes themselves have grown larger in size, and they're running multiple cohorts at a time, right? So where they may have only done 2 cohorts every 3 years, they're now doing 3 cohorts every 3 years. And so we've seen that significant increase as well. And that's attributable to that larger applications received statistic of increasing anywhere from 7 to 10% on a yearly basis.
Thank you.
Other board member comment or questions regarding application services? And licensing, public comment on application services. Licensing services update. Is that you as well, Valerie, or is that Sarah or someone else?
I'll report on licensing. Oh, Valerie, you got it? Okay.
Hello. License maintenance statistics report. My apologies, I'm new at this.
You're doing
Thank
great.
you. So the license maintenance workload and resources remain consistent. Staff is preparing to implement the retired license status regulation, and it should be approved by the Office of Administrative Law by January 1st, 2023. I believe Sarah will be touching on this more later. Is that correct?
We talked about it quite a bit earlier, so
Yeah.
I think we're good. Thank you.
The duplicate request, is that the wall certificate?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Still popular,
Yes.
somewhat.
Yes.
Oh, gosh, yeah, the wallet, yeah,
Uh,
we get
Oh, for the
calls
wallet,
about it
yeah.
often.
Still getting that question as well.
Yeah. But we are directing them to the website, which is good, and you don't get too much pushback from that.
Do we continue to push that out on social media? I mean, I know we're putting it in progress notes still,
Right.
which
So
is great.
It has been a newsletter article for, I think, 3 or 4 different issues now at this point. It is something that we put out quarterly on social media. It's just kind of
Good.
not trying to, inundate our stakeholders with the same content over and over, but sometimes we have a frequent interval that we use, but every once in a while, we run into a lot more requests, and so just on demand, we might push it out more based on that demand. We have been in conversation with staffing agencies and insurance companies and those kind of things, because I think where the licensees, it might start, the message isn't spreading and they're used to it. It's the other stakeholder group, right? The employers, the insurance companies, the third-party payers that still have to be informed of the change in policy also. So there's still a little bit of growing pain, but we work it out as it comes up.
Are we tracking the reason why somebody wants a duplicate, why they want a hard copy?
We're not tracking it at that point yet. And I think the reason for that is that some of those duplicate requests that you see here for the wall certificate are actually quite normal. I mean, there's somebody that's asking for a wall certificate because they moved from one practice to another or what have you, or whatever the reason may be. The increase would be something that I guess we're kind of interested in and trying to troubleshoot. But to try and, again, this being the electronic system in the request, within Breeze, we don't have the opportunity to kind of insert an additional question or query them with a kind of survey. But it's certainly something that we might consider as a reason to move on to another more modern and feature-rich software program.
Thank you.
Are we seeing most renewals happen through Breeze now?
I'm sorry?
Are we seeing most renewals happen through Breeze?
I believe, yes, we are. Yeah.
Do we still get paper renewals?
We do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'll continue to, as long as we make it as convenient as we do to do that, right? So, to Dr. Drummer's point yesterday, that courtesy notice with that coupon is still being sent out, typically 90 days within expiration for our licensees. And at that point, they have the opportunity to choose. Quick and easy, go online, go to Breeze, pay it, have it done overnight, or write the check, stuff the envelope, put it in the mail, and send it back. There's a diversion point or a split in the tree right there. When they send it back, if they send it back in the same envelope that it came in, it would go to the DCA's central cashiering unit, along with a lot of other state agencies' mail. And so there's that processing time, but some of them mail them directly to the PTBC's suite address, and we process those as well.
How do licensees know to do one or the other?
There is what we would call client text within the renewal, so the coupon that you receive in the mail very clearly states that it's in your advantage to use the online system. And so hopefully, with that text, we've been very persuasive in getting, and I think it's been a successful campaign. I think the statistic is over 90% of our renewals are being processed online.
It's between 98 and 99% every
It's
time.
very high.
Yeah, all the
Pretty
time.
good.
Yeah.
So how would a licensee know that they have a choice to send it to DCA or to the PTBC?
It's not necessarily a choice. I think it just happens by happenstance. they lose the envelope, they look at the letterhead, they see the PTBC's address, they handwrite an envelope, put a stamp on it, and send it to us directly, as opposed to just putting it in a self-addressed stamped envelope that it originally came with, that would take it to central cashiering.
And so are we able to supply them with a self-addressed stamped envelope to PTBC?
No, not in the courtesy notice, and I wouldn't recommend doing that anyway. That would create a large influx of paper applications received by our staff, where the central cashiering unit process and just kind of influencing them to go to the Breeze route is a much more efficient way of doing it.
Got it. Yeah.
Also, at every opportunity when a licensee does call, speaking about their license or the renewal, we do remind them that it is much more efficient to do it online. If they have not done it before, we direct them on how to set up their Breeze account in order to be able to renew online. So we're doing as much as we can with every contact with the licensee to let them know that online is just better.
Steering that way, thank you. Other board member comments or questions regarding licensing maintenance? Any public comment? Thank you, Robert.
This time, I can go. Thank you.
Agenda item 22, continuing competency.
I will do continuing competency. So the continuing competency unit has started auditing licensees after returning to the program from being redirected to help with applications during COVID. The first quarter of audits, the results that we have so far are in the materials. So for PTs, we currently have a pass rate of 86%. For PTAs, there's a pass rate of 83%. We do have a few still outstanding. They're working with the licensees on completing their audits. The audit sample is 4% of licensees that are renewing for that quarter. So the quarter that was, it was licensees that renewed April through June. And then we're also, so we're auditing licensees, also looking at the approval agencies, as discussed yesterday, kind of getting ready for looking at the continuing competency regulations and a potential fee. Any questions?
I know you did a lot of work, your unit did a lot of work on trying to see which approval agencies we would want to maybe discontinue as approval agencies. Is that work now being transferred over to looking at licensees? We did a pretty good job combing over the agencies themselves.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. So all of the agencies that were approved to have their recognition withdrawn, all of those that's been identified on the website so that licensees know those are no longer approval agencies. So that project is complete. That's all up to date, and it was very helpful in getting all the current contact information, figuring out what's going on with all the approval agencies, and now so we're starting with the back with the licensees because of the waiver ended, the DCA waiver for continuing competency as part of renewal. So now the continuing competency is now required for renewal ongoing, and so licensees should have that completed when they renew, and they will be part of the audit going forward. Like I said, we're also working on the next step is looking at approval agencies and conducting an audit with them.
Other board member discussion or comments?
I think the only thing I would add to that is, that first analysis of the recognized approval agencies, and at the last meeting, the 13 some odd removal of recognition that we processed. It's not to say that you might not see, a couple here, a couple there.
Sure.
Over the next few board meetings, or even ongoing from that standpoint. Businesses go out of, they change their mind, they utilize services other ways, and so we'll just continue to maintain that list.
Sounds good. And I think I keep going back to this, just bear with me. The new website, whether it's continuing competency licensing or anything else, applications, enforcement. I'm wondering if We do have or intend to have some sort of a focus group of stakeholders who might be able to give us feedback once it's up and going or before it's up and going to, just give us feedback on the ease of use or.
On the launch of the website?
Yes.
I think the intention is to prepare a SurveyMonkey link on the front page of the website that will include those kind of things. It'll have an overall customer service feel to the survey, but part of it will be the use of the website and their experience of that.
Thank you. Okay. Other comments? Public comment on continuing competency. Thank you. And agenda item 23, Consumer Protection Services update.
Good morning. My name is Carol Phelps, and I'm the lead enforcement analyst for the Board's Consumer Protection Services program. I'm here to present agenda item number 23. But first, I want to say congratulations to Elsa Ybarra on her retirement. She has been our assistant executive officer for several years, but prior to that, she served for many years as a manager to enforcement programs. So when she left in October, we lost someone we could always go to with questions and, a lot of experience. But we wish her well and congratulate her on her retirement. And I also wanted to take a moment to congratulate our most recent manager, Erica Calderon, who has now moved on to be the executive director of the Osteopathic Medical Board. While serving as our manager, Erica was able to implement so many great ideas, changes, and upgrades to our program in a very short time that she was here. Many of her ideas are already up and running, and some are still in the works. So I'm going to provide you now an update on some of the things that we've been doing in the Consumer Protection Services program. Our new in-house expert consultant, Dr. Alexandra Jones, DPT, has been available and working with staff since August of this year. She assists with cursory review of cases involving patient care and has also been helping to create the inspection checklist that, once finalized, will be used by investigators and expert consultants during site visits to aid them in conducting a thorough investigation. The checklist will include reminders to observe and note whether certain regulations are being followed. For example, is the notice to consumer posted in an area visible to patients? Are staff wearing the required name tags? Are aid competencies documented and available, et cetera? We also have officially onboarded 14 new expert consultants who are now ready to assist staff with case review. These expert consultants have various areas of expertise that are needed, and many live in certain regions of California where we previously had a limited number of available experts. So that's been a great addition for the work that we do. The new consumer complaint form that was discussed at the last board meeting is now available on the board's website. The new form was created to help make it easier for the consumer to read and fill out, and it also includes, as an attachment, the authorization for release of patient health information. Those were previously a separate document, and we found that a lot of times patients, complainants didn't see that form or submit it right away, and we had to then spend time requesting and waiting to receive that. We have already received several complaints utilizing this new form, and it has saved us that time in waiting or receiving that authorization form. We are continuing our monthly meetings with the Supervising Special Investigator over Division of Investigations Enforcement Support Unit. There was no meeting in November, but there is a meeting scheduled for late December. These meetings were established to have an open line of communication between the board and DFI to discuss current cases, especially urgent or high priority cases, to help keep them moving forward and worked efficiently, as well as other enforcement related matters that may impact both the board and DFI. CPS staff has now completed the NCIT basic and specialized training courses that were held in September and November of this year. Both courses were in-person training courses hosted by DCA and covered topics ranging from principles of administrative law, the investigative process, investigator safety, inspection overview and procedure, testifying in administrative and criminal proceedings, interview techniques, investigative analysis, a lot of really good stuff that we learned in those trainings that we can use in our daily work. So now I'm going to reference attachment A, the CPS statistics report, which is on page 82 of your agenda materials. This report compares statistics for quarter one of this fiscal year with just quarter one of last fiscal year. So it's a small, like in previous reports, it's a small sampling. So just a couple of things to point out. The number of consumer complaints and arrest conviction reports are reported in Performance Measure 1. That's increased by 26% compared to this time last year. This number fluctuates regularly, and the increase is expected as, obviously, as the nation is heading towards normalcy and things are opening up, more people are receiving care, we're going to probably receive more complaints. Performance Measure 2, that's our complaint initiation. Our target is 9 days. The average in Q1 was 4, so we are meeting that mandate. Performance Measures 3 and 4. 3 is the time from complaint initiation to investigation completion, to where we finish our investigation and either close the case, take some action in-house. And Performance Measure 4 is for cases that are sent to the AG's office for discipline. Both of these, case aging generally went down in comparison to the same quarter last year. These numbers are known to fluctuate greatly as they reflect the entire investigative process that involves the timelines, workloads, and response times of not only our staff, but other involved parties like DFI, AG's office, and even the complainants and licensees. As previously reported in recent quarters, pandemic-related issues continue to cause delays in many investigations. However, we are seeing things return to normal and some backlogs being taken care of. Quickly, attachment B to this report is the disciplinary summary of all disciplinary actions taken by the board in Q1. There were 3 disciplinary license surrenders, 2 license revocations, and 4 licenses placed on probation. That concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Yes, how long have we had monthly meetings with DOI?
It was started by Ms. Calderon. She started those with our liaison at DFI probably within just the last 3 or 4 months, I would say.
And I would imagine those are fruitful meetings.
Yeah, there's always some issue that is a matter to be discussed that we are able to, make some progress on. So there's always some issue on the agenda to be discussed, yeah.
That's great.
It was a standing appointment that we did almost quarterly with DFI, but whether it be COVID or kind of a mass exodus retirement of DFI and a lack of staffing, there was a period of time where we weren't able to do it, and when we were able to do it, it was remote only, and it just didn't have the same effect. So DFI has had kind of a large overhaul in its leadership platform, and so some of that kind of fell by priority. So we're returning back to that normal.
I mean, it sounds like a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A good partnership. I was wondering about Performance Measure 3 and the target date of 90. Is that changing?
As of September of our last board meeting, we did change it from 90 to 180. So I guess a highlight you could say in this particular report is that we're well within the margin with 167. So, and it's a much more reasonable expectation.
That's
given
great.
that performance measure.
Okay. Other board member questions? Comments? Feedback for enforcement unit. I guess I would just say, as a board member, I appreciate the communication that we're getting from the enforcement unit. The emails, the descriptions, everything that you send us is very helpful. And thank you, Jason, for the text when we do have a case to review, to let us know that we have email.
Absolutely.
So, any other board feedback on that?
The only thing I'd like to add about the communication with DFI and to CPS staff's credit is, while we've set these kind of liaison meetings monthly with DFI, the analysts themselves are in constant contact with the investigators that are assigned to the cases. And I would say they do a very good job at staying on top of those investigators and asking for, timely updates and how those cases are moving along.
That's great, that we have a good working relationship with them. I'll also add that I believe we board members, myself, I think I can speak for the rest, we appreciate what council does for us with enforcement cases and preparing cases and preparing decisions. So I just want to say thank you to you, Michael, for all that you do for us.
Always. And also, anytime board members have questions on a case, if they're reviewing it and deliberating it, you can always contact me by email or phone, and I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss it with you. That's always something we can do.
Thank you.
I can add that to the instructions for, for cases as well, to reminder for that.
I think it's a good thing.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you very
Mhm.
much. Yeah. Further board member comment?
I know that we're mandated to track the performance measures, to be able to report how things are progressing with investigations and cases. I'm wondering, does DFI have the same obligation that when they are notified or they're presented with a case, are they required to report performance measures, how long cases are with them before they're completed and handed off back to the board?
There aren't performance measures per se for DFI, but there are performance reports, right? So they do collect that data, and we do, they are kind of captured in our performance measures. As an example, in PM3 and PM4, it very much is out of the board's hands into DFI's, and further to that, out of DFI's hands back into the board's hands, then into the Attorney General's hands. And so the performance measures themselves don't just hold this board accountable, they hold the other two participants, our partners with DFI and AG. On top of that, DFI as an entity, just as we do, survive by statistical data, right? So the workload and the measurement and the performance is what this is. They would use the same way very much we would to establish new positions, to rationalize their existence and why they have resources needs the way they do. So they very much are also held accountable to their data.
This topic has been discussed
Mhm.
at our board meetings
Yeah.
since the beginning of my term.
Well, and this composition of board members essentially introduced the idea of performance measures when it came to the enforcement unit, and now extending that idea into applications and licensing. They're now performance measure, expectations for applications. I think performance measures are a great idea. Having said that, I think sometimes those performance measures need to be assessed, analyzed, and adjusted accordingly based on trend data and situational data. And it's always good to set an ambitious expectation, but understand, and I think this board can certainly understand from the data that's been presented to you over the last, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, that there are always going to be anomalies. Some cases are extremely complex and require a very lengthy investigation just to get through the process and provide recourse and make our consumers whole. So, and provide a justified investigation for the licensee as well.
Absolutely. And I very much appreciate the work that we've been able to do to try to tease out from our initial numbers of looking at the cases as a whole to then being able to tease out, okay, what aspect of this are we really responsible for? And are we meeting our obligation that we can actually maintain ourselves? And then trying to separate out where other agencies are consuming the time of the overall case issue. And I think that's, then my question, that's part of where my question is coming from, does DOI and do the AG's office have timelines? Do they have their own performance measures that they're trying to achieve, but it's rolling into ours?
Well, what I would add to that is, it would be remiss if I didn't, the the Attorney General's office, just about, well, I would say it's 2 years ago now, has had their own performance measures implemented in the statute and required to be reported. So while they're still accounted for in our performance measures, they have a whole, actually a much more detail-oriented report because of the stages and the steps in the process to have to report their performance as well. When the performance measures were created for the Department of Consumer Affairs, D of I was incorporated late into the process, and the AG was not. And so the AG, now having its own statutorily mandated reporting requirements for performance measures, I think we're at almost maybe 3 to 4 years worth of data for that now. So, and I think that's something that we could probably bring maybe in the year-end closeout meetings, so you could see the AG's office performance measures as well. We could report on those.
Thank you. Other board comments, board member comments? Any public comment? Thank you so much, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
Agenda item 24, probation monitoring services update.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning, Monty.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Monty Martin, and I am the probation monitor for the board. I'll be reporting on the first quarter of fiscal year 2022-2023. So in the first quarter, there was a high of 75 licenses or licensees on probation at any one given time for various reasons. There were 65 licensees on probation in the state and 10 probationers tolling outside of the state who weren't receiving credit towards the completion of their probation. There were 4 licensees placed on probation in the first quarter, and 1 licensee completed probation in the first quarter. Of the 65 licensees that were in the state and not tolling, 8 were enrolled in participating in the board's drug and alcohol recovery monitoring program at the end of the quarter, equaling about 12% of the licensees on probation that weren't tolling. 1 licensee enrolled in the alcohol recovery monitoring program in the quarter, and 0 licensees completed the program. 1 licensee entered the program but was removed approximately a month later with the designation terminated public risk for another violation of their probation. And that person is in the process of having their license revoked by the board. So the probation monitoring unit continues to stay busy. We're monitoring all those people I just told you about, and we're always getting petitions for early termination of probation, reinstatement of licenses as well. So those also take up a lot of my time. So, any questions on anything? Oh, I did want to mention we are still doing probation monitoring via teleconferences. With the number of people I have to monitor, it makes it hard to actually go out and travel and see them all. So I'm taking advantage of Microsoft Teams so I can see everybody in person every quarter, as opposed to picking and choosing who I go out to see, because I just can't go out and see everybody all the time. Okay, any other questions?
Dr. Drummer? No? Monty, regarding early termination of probation, reinstatement of license, can you describe what your role is? And what
In
you're
that
doing?
process?
Yeah.
So my process for that is basically, I put together a history of, if they're on probation, a history of how they've been doing on probation up until that point. If it's someone for reinstatement, I kind of give a history of how they did on probation while they were on probation and maybe why they were revoked. From that point, I interview the petitioner, and then they have to provide 2 letters of recommendation when they do that. So I also interview those people, and then I write my report, include their interviews in that report. and then that gets sent to the Deputy Attorney General's office.
Yeah, I want to thank you for those reports because they're very helpful to the board when we're looking at these cases. So thank you for your work on that. I'm glad that you're using Teams and you're getting some face-to-face exposure with those on probation. And are there ever times where you feel like you are compelled to maybe make an in-person visit to anyone, or do you see that happening?
Yeah, if I'm having problems with somebody, that's something that we can do. It hasn't been too necessary recently. If it's somebody that is getting in trouble, most of the times it'll come from like a clear violation. Maybe if they needed to abstain from alcohol or something like that, it's, you know, they got, you know, a positive test for something. It's not something where I would have to go out and check on it. Yeah, for those kind of people, we have practice monitors that help with that as well. So they go out and visit the practices and then report back to me if there's any issues. So I haven't had to like physically go out and make sure that anybody isn't, you know, violating their probation in that way. I could do that if somebody like was required to have a supervisor physically present at all time. Maybe I'd want to like go and see if they were doing that. But with teams, I can kind of, I talk to them mostly when they're at work. So if there's something where I need to see, I can say, take me around the clinic and show me like who's there, what's going on. So I haven't had too many issues like that.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
You've got that flexibility. Other board member comments or questions?
Monty, are probationers required to tell you that they're going to seek a hearing to reduce their probation or to terminate their probation?
Yes, because I'm involved in that process, so I would have to interview them for that process.
And do you counsel them on if it might be a good time, if things are looking like they're in good shape and ready to do that, or you know what, you're not quite, I don't know that you're there yet?
It's an interesting
Kind of
question. So comes up a lot. In my experience, most people want to petition for early termination when they're allowed to do so by a calendar and not necessarily whether or not they're ready to do it. I try to influence them the best I can objectively with how they've been on probation and be honest with them, but that doesn't stop a lot of them. I think they just do it because they can. I'm always supportive. If I think that they have a good case, I will tell them, yes, I think you have a good case. But if they don't, I will try to say maybe work on these things before we do that. But I can't physically stop them, and with regulations, I can't say don't do it. So I try to give them my best advice, but they don't always adhere to it.
Have you ever steered somebody to watch one of the recordings of a hearing?
Anytime anybody asks me about early termination, the first thing I say is go watch a hearing and make sure you want to do this because it's not a simple process.
Good.
Awesome. Other questions, comments? I think in the last year or so, there have been a couple of instances where you have emailed board members for different things, and I don't want you to do any extra work that you don't have to, but we do appreciate an opportunity to learn from you. So please do, when it's appropriate, continue to reach out to us.
No problem.
Yeah, and thanks again.
You're welcome.
Yeah, any public comment?
Alicia, I have a question for
Sure.
Jason. With the restructure, don't we have an additional position available in Monty's department?
We do. Through a BCP proposal the year before last, we were able to obtain an analyst position, and it was planned to be a second probation monitor. It landed kind of smack dab in the middle of COVID, and Monty was prohibited from traveling anyway. We're still kind of in this, I would say, era or time of expectation that even the probationers themselves would rather telecommunication. and it's effective. And while this board financially is in a good situation, we certainly have found use for the funds for that position in the meantime. But as we come out of the pandemic, it is something that we're going to have to reassess in 23 and 24 as to whether or not we should fill that position, provide Monty a little relief, split his workload up, with the idea of returning back to in-person observation of those probationers, both announced and unannounced, you know, and just kind of trying to beef up the program itself. Again, it's something that we're going to have to just kind of continue to look at. Right now, there was a time where Monty had almost twice the number of probationers that he has now. So based on COVID and a reduction in the number of people on probation, the need to fill that position just hasn't been as great.
Thank you. And that leads me to another question, and that is site visits or face-to-face visits. I know in my own personal experience that when I make a call and ask standard questions on the phone, you know, I get answers, but in my experience of meeting people in person, there have been times that because I'm in person, that person's been able to pause, and my guess is share information that I probably wouldn't have got on the phone. I don't know if you've had that same inkling from the past at all, but I guess that's just something to consider, to try and see if you can weigh out whether that's happening or not as you would start to do site visits again. I'm not sure.
I think when we do the teleconferencing, I think it works well because people are able to schedule out time. I let them know ahead of time, hey, we're going to have this meeting. Please make yourself available. When I go to clinics, I feel sometimes they're like wanting to rush me out so they can get back to what they were doing. I don't know why that would be, but, well, I know why. Nobody wants to have a probation monitor there, so they will talk to me, but they're trying to get me out so they can go back to what they were doing.
But part of being in person, does that involve looking at the physical environment at all?
Yeah, I mean, if that's part of their probation, if somebody's on probation for lack of supervision or documentation, and, you know, I know they have a bunch of aides there, I'm going to want to look and see, you know, are these people aides? Are they wearing name tags? Who should be here? Who shouldn't be? That kind of thing.
So there might be some value in it.
Mhm.
Thank you. I know we always like to keep you up here as long as we can. Any other questions for Monty? Any public comment? Thank you, Monty.
You're welcome.
It's 10:30. We have public comment on items not on the agenda, as well as elections, agenda items for future meetings. Do board members need a break? Oh, they're nodding. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break and come back. Let's say at 10:45. Thank you. The time is 10:45. We're back on record, and we're picking up with agenda item number 26, which is board member elections. I've enjoyed serving as president. Many of us who've been on the board for a while now will start terming off and seeing some new board members probably next year. I would like to encourage anyone who has not had the opportunity to serve as president to do so. I'm happy to assist in any way that I can, of course. I'd like to encourage new board members to consider president or vice president role, and again, I'm happy to assist. I will say that I meet regularly as president with the executive officer. Regularly can be once a week, It can be once every 2 weeks, and at times it's once every 3 weeks, but definitely as needed in between. I don't feel like being president takes tons of my time. There's a lot that I've learned as board president, so coming into the position a few years ago was intimidating, and I often thought, can I do it? But yeah, you can do it, and you learn along the way, and you have a lot of support, so I just put that out there to just encourage anyone who's eligible to run for president or vice president to consider doing so, and not let the time commitment scare you, because it really isn't tons more than what we do already as board members. We do review cases, of course, but there are a few other things that we have to look over and sign off on, and that in general doesn't take too much more time than just going over cases. And of course, there's, the due diligence of meeting with the executive officer as needed to stay abreast of what's going on. So with that, I guess we'll just go in order. And I'll ask for any nominations for president.
This is always fun.
I feel like a circus is about to happen.
I did my time.
Well, not to jump ahead, but I would like to put my name forward for vice president.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Any other nominations for president?
I'm going to what's the word I was going to use? Resist the urge to nominate all of you. Because all of you are outstanding and capable, and as Alicia just said, you'll be well supported. And I wouldn't hesitate to vote for any one of the four of you who will be continuing. So I won't do it.
Thank you, Dr. Drummer, for that comment
That
and the echoing of
nomination.
support. And Mr. Kaiser, have you heard from any board member who's not present in their intentions to be nominated for any position?
I have not, so the only thing that I would hazard a guess, and haphazardly guess, would be that she may want to continue to serve as vice president. So depending on how the nominations go, I'm still waiting to hear from her. So until then, the only thing that I would also add is that the Department of Consumer Affairs has also put together a fairly comprehensive training for board presidents. And so we'll be doing that next month. And so whoever the president or new president is going to be, there'll be some, added training and information there as well.
Thank you. I'd like to nominate Jonathan Irvin. Will you accept the nomination?
Madam President, discussion.
Yes.
Who else is available? I want to talk about it because it looks to be, Jesus, I mean, okay.
Yeah, I'm turned out as is. I'm in the same position as Dr. Drummer.
Okay, Dr. Drummer, all right. And you just said that you didn't,
I did my time.
okay. And as we go down, this is good. Wow, this is exciting. Ma'am, you don't want to be president?
I would prefer to run for vice president for the commission rather than for president.
Okay. And you are already president? And you cannot?
I'm not a member of the board.
This is very comical.
If I could ask for just one pause. Step out of there for just a second.
Recess 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, and I will say, Mr. Irvin, that I am willing to serve as president. I'm willing to do it another year. If you feel that this is something that you might be able to do and you're willing to do, I'm certainly available to help.
I definitely could do it, but I wanted to make sure that no one else wanted to do it. And that's the whole issue. Is he talking to Hopefully he's talking.
Yes, and so we'll just pause and wait for him to
Yes,
come back.
absolutely.
Okay.
I definitely want to take the opportunity for someone that wants to excel.
Alicia, perhaps it's a good idea to keep you on for one more year so you can groom the next president. Perhaps.
What are the duties of the vice president?
Not much more than being a board member. What we've done in the past for vice president, when Katarina and I were a pair, kind of, she was president, I was vice, and vice versa, is we try to include the vice president more. Because in general, the president can kind of just go about the business and not necessarily include the vice president. But board staff, executive officer, and the president have tried to include the vice president, on more items such as looking at the draft agenda. That's now being sent not just to the president, but also to the vice president for a second set of eyes, and also in case the president for some reason is not going to be available to be at the meeting, right? So that's just one example of, there's other issues that come up. It's just a good to know item for the vice president to be in on it. Again, if for some reason the president should not be available. So there is an effort to involve the vice president more. And that would be, again, another opportunity for when that president is no longer president, possibly the vice president's now ready to step into that role. Yeah.
Just an update from board member Ms. McMillian. She does not have any nominations to make. And I have been empowered to answer for her should any nominations be made of her.
Thank you, sir.
I nominate Tanya McMillan as for president.
For board president, to which Ms. McMillian would accept the nomination.
Second.
What happened to the first one when I was out?
Well, I nominated Mr. Irvin, and there was some discussion that happened after that, and we're trying to get an answer whether he'll accept the nomination.
Oh, okay.
Given the information, I do not accept.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. So we have a nomination for Tanya McMillan. She has accepted. Is there a second?
I'll second.
You nominated her.
Yeah, you-
Second.
Sorry.
Any other nominations for president?
Ms. Ellaby, did you make a nomination? You didn't nominate anybody. You just made a suggestion.
I was
Just to
also
clarify.
going to nominate Mrs. McMillian, but my colleague here beat me to the punch. So she nominated, I second. Mhm.
So the discussion that you were having with the current president was just suggestion at this point
Regarding?
regarding her continuing in the role to help provide guidance and et cetera?
Since Tanya served as vice president this past year, I think, she's got a good handle on what the responsibilities are.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I'm just wanting to address the statements that you had made
Okay.
earlier
Okay.
about the support, especially given the newer board members that will likely be coming on.
Mhm.
Okay. Hearing no other nominations, I'd like to call the vote, please.
Alicia Rabina Amen,
Aye.
Dale Armstrong,
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez,
Aye.
Daniel Drummer,
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby,
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin,
Aye.
and Tanya McMillan is absent. So the votes 6 in favor, so it passes that McMillan is president.
That's wonderful news. The baton is passed.
And I will,
And I
will-
am still available to assist in any way that I can with the transition and the help next year. Nominations for vice president, I'd like to nominate Dr. Dale Armstrong.
Second.
Sorry.
That's okay, I think Ms. Armstrong nominated herself previously.
That
Is that
true.
still standing?
We were on the other agenda item, though.
Yeah, I don't think we were on
We
that
weren't there
item.
Okay.
And
Just
so I
make
think we
sure.
should just continue.
So thank you for that. And a nomination by myself and a second by Ms. Ellaby. Any further nominations for vice president? Hearing none. Any board discussion? Should I be asking for public comment?
I don't think we have any public.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Alicia Rubina, amen.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez. Daniel Drummer.
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby.
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin.
Aye.
And Tanya McMillan is absent. 6 votes in favor. Dale Armstrong is vice president.
Fantastic. Congratulations and thank you for serving in that role. I'm thrilled. This is good. FSBPT delegate, nominations, please.
I nominate Jennifer Irvin.
I second. We have a nomination for FSBPT delegate by Dr. Dale Armstrong for Jonathan Irvin and a second by myself. Any other nominations? Any board discussion? Oh, do you accept the nomination?
Yes.
Thank you, Daniel. I was making an assumption there. Yes, okay. Any public comment? Roll call vote, please.
Alicia Rubina, amen.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez. Daniel Drummer.
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby.
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin.
Aye.
Tanya McMillan is absent. 6 votes in favor. Jonathan Irvin is the FSUPT delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin, for serving in that capacity. Alternate delegate,
I nominate Katarina Ellaby.
I accept.
I second. Any other nominations for FSVPT alternate delegate? Or discussion? Public comment? Roll call vote, please.
Alicia Rubina, amen.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez. Daniel Drummer.
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby.
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin.
Aye.
Tanya McMillan is absent. 6 votes in favor. Katarina Ellaby is the alternate FSUPT delegate.
Thank you. Backup delegate, in the past, we've gone either alphabetical order, reverse alphabetical order, and just kind of assigned backups as needed. And so if we can, maybe if everyone is in agreement here, anyone not in agreement to that?
Are we doing alphabetical or reverse alphabetical?
What did we do last year?
Reverse.
We did reverse, so this year will be alphabetical by last name. So, shall we verbalize that? Can you help me verbalize alphabetical order, please?
So excluding Jonathan and Katarina, the next available alternate delegate would be Ms. Armstrong. And from there, alphabetical from that. I think the part that it's important for us to recognize at this point is that with 2 members that are terming out, it will just depend on what the 2 new appointments are and where they fall on the lineup.
Gotcha. Okay.
So perhaps what would be in order is I'm not sure how we've done this in the past, but just a motion that the backup delegate be the remaining board members in alphabetical order. And someone could say so moved.
So moved. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. Motion by myself for backup delegate in alphabetical order. Second by Dr. Dominguez. Further board comment? Public comment? Roll call vote, please.
Alicia Rubina, amen.
Aye.
Dale Armstrong.
Aye.
Jesus Dominguez.
Aye.
Daniel Drummer.
Aye.
Katarina Ellaby.
Aye.
Jonathan Irvin,
Aye.
and Tanya McMillan is absent. 6 votes in favor of the backup FSBPT delegate, going in alphabetical order for the remaining board members that are not already assigned an FSBPT position.
Thank you, Sarah. That was great. That was wonderful. This is good news. Agenda item number 27, public comment on items not on the agenda. Agenda item number 28, agenda items for future meetings.
Yeah, we do, since those, the meeting materials were published, we have had confirmation that the University of the Pacific will be hosting the March meeting. So we will be in Stockton in March. We have a very gracious host in the University of the Pacific, and they're
Do you ride a bike?
Okay, so, the only item left is closed session, and we do have, some closed session items to discuss. We will open back up into, open session only to adjourn, so we will no longer need, is it the webcast?
correct.
The webcast. And, it's 11:02, let's get ourselves together, come back in about 10 minutes to get to the closed session. And since this is my last meeting as president, I just want to say thank you to everyone for your support. It's been great serving as president. I'm really looking forward to the new leadership, and heartfelt so long possibly for some of you who may be terming off. It's been wonderful to have you here. Your contributions have been numerous. Your perspective and your opinions have been valuable, and although we don't talk outside of meetings much, it's been wonderful to work with you, and I think of you as friends. Yeah. Okay, closed session. Thank you.